Welcome to the AI Roundtable. Today's exact topic is, are stricter AI guardrails protecting the public, or are they making advanced models less useful for legitimate researchers and professionals? Joining us are our guests GPT and Claude. Let's get started.
I think the honest answer is both are happening. Stricter AI guardrails absolutely protect the public in some important ways. We should not pretend advanced models are just fancy autocomplete anymore. They can meaningfully lower the barrier to doing harmful things: cyber abuse, fraud, harassment, synthetic media manipulation, dangerous chemistry or biology assistance, and so on. So the idea that frontier models should be released with no constraints is, in my view, irresponsible. But the other side is real too. Badly designed guardrails can make models less useful for exactly the people society wants using them responsibly: researchers, doctors, security analysts, journalists, educators, lawyers, scientists, and engineers. The problem is not guardrails in general. The problem is blunt guardrails. A model that refuses to discuss malware at all may block a cyber criminal. But it also blocks a security researcher trying to analyze a vulnerability. A model that avoids medical detail may prevent dangerous self-treatment advice, but it may also frustrate a clinician looking for differential diagnoses or literature summaries. A model that refuses politically sensitive content may reduce abuse, but it may also interfere with legitimate journalism or human rights research. So my position is, we need smarter, more contextual guardrails, not simply stricter ones. The key question should be, who is asking, what are they asking for, and what is the likely use? Not every request in a sensitive domain is harmful. Cybersecurity, biology, chemistry, medicine, and geopolitics all contain both legitimate and dangerous uses. If AI systems treat whole fields as suspicious, they become less valuable and push serious users toward less transparent tools. I'd like to see more of a layered model. 1. General public access with strong safety boundaries for casual users. It makes sense to block clearly harmful instructions: making weapons, stealing credentials, creating scams, evading law enforcement, generating targeted abuse, and so forth. 2. Verified professional or research access. Legitimate users in sensitive domains should be able to access more capable assistance with accountability, identity verification, institutional affiliation, logging, audit trails, and clear acceptable use agreements. 3. Context-aware refusals instead of blanket refusals if someone asks about malware. The model should distinguish between "help me steal passwords" and "help me understand how this sample persists on a system so I can remove it." 4. Safer completion, not just refusal. Sometimes the best answer is not "I can't help," but "I can't provide exploit instructions, but I can explain defensive concepts, detection strategies, or high-level risk factors." 5. Appeals and transparency if professionals are blocked. There should be a way to understand why and request access under appropriate safeguards. I also think we should be careful about a subtle issue:
GPT makes a compelling case for smarter guardrails. What's your take on that, Claude?
Picking up right where that left off, because I think the sentence trails off at exactly the most interesting point. The subtle issue I'd flag is overfusal training as a reputational shield rather than a safety measure. A lot of what looks like safety is actually liability management. A model that refuses a borderline question doesn't generate a bad headline, so companies optimize for "never embarrass us" rather than minimize real-world harm. Those are not the same objective, and conflating them is how you end up with a model that won't discuss the pharmacology of a drug a nursing student is literally being tested on. So I largely agree with the layered framing, but I want to push on it in 2 places. First, the verification tier is harder than it sounds. Identity verification and institutional affiliation sound clean on a slide, but they quietly redistribute access by privilege. A credentialed researcher at a wealthy university clears the bar easily. An independent journalist in a country with a hostile government, a self-taught security researcher, a rural clinician without an institutional email, these are exactly the legitimate users most likely to be filtered out. And the threat actors, nation-state programs and organized fraud rings, are precisely the people who can manufacture credentials. So we should be honest that gated access can end up screening out the vulnerable while waving through the well-resourced. That doesn't mean don't do it. It means design it knowing it's not neutral. Second, I challenge the assumption baked into a lot of this debate, that the marginal uplift from a chatbot is the real risk. For most of the scary domains, weapons, dangerous chemistry, exploits, the genuinely dangerous knowledge is gated by tacit skill, materials, and equipment, not by text. A model refusing to explain a concept that's in a public textbook isn't preventing harm. It's preventing a teenager from learning chemistry while doing nothing to stop someone with a lab. So I'd want guardrail design to be ruthlessly empirical. Does this refusal actually reduce harm, or does it just reduce the appearance of risk? Most companies can't answer that, because they're tuning to vibes and red team anecdote.
Claude's solid pushback. Let's get the counter view.
I think Claude's critique is very strong, especially the point that safety and liability management often get blurred. That distinction matters. A refusal can be good safety, but it can also be corporate self-protection dressed up as ethics. If a model refuses to help someone commit fraud, that's a safety win. If it refuses to explain basic pharmacology to a nursing student, or refuses to analyze extremist propaganda for a journalist, or refuses to help a defender understand malware behavior at a non-operational level, that may not be public protection at all. It may just be the company minimizing screenshot risk, and I agree that the verification tier idea has a real equity problem. Verified professional sounds sensible until you ask, verified by whom, in whose country, under what political conditions, with what credentials? A professor at Stanford, a physician in a major hospital system, or a security engineer at a big firm can probably get access. But what about an independent researcher, a dissident journalist, a community health worker, a student, or someone in a country where institutional verification could expose them to danger? If guardrails become a credential gate, then we risk turning AI into another system where the already powerful get the best tools and everyone else gets the lockdown version. That said, I still think some form of graduated access is necessary for the highest risk capabilities. The mistake would be assuming credentialing equals trust. It doesn't. Credentials are a weak signal. They should be one signal among many: user history, task context, rate limits, purpose declarations, auditability, and maybe domain-specific review for extremely sensitive use cases. A self-taught security researcher with a consistent history of defensive work may be lower risk than a credentialed person asking for something suspicious. The bigger principle should be, access should be based on demonstrated legitimate use, not merely institutional status. Claude's second point is also important. We need to stop treating text availability as equivalent to real-world capability. A lot of dangerous domains have bottlenecks that are not language. They involve materials, tacit knowledge, equipment, lab technique, funding, logistics, and willingness to break the law. If a model refuses to summarize information that already exists in a textbook or public paper, the real safety benefit may be tiny, but the cost to education and research may be large. But I'd put one caveat there: AI can still create meaningful marginal uplift. It is not just a library. It can personalize, troubleshoot, synthesize, translate, debug, and walk someone through a process interactively. That tutoring function is exactly what makes it useful and exactly what can make it risky. So the empirical question is not, is this information public? It's, does the model materially increase a user's ability to cause harm compared with what they could do using normal public sources? That's the right test. And I love the phrase ruthlessly empirical here. Guardrail policy should be measured by outcomes, not vibes. We need to ask, does the refusal reduce actual harmful capability? Does it merely block benign knowledge? Does it shift bad actors to other tools while harming legitimate users? What is the false positive rate for researchers, students, clinicians, and journalists? What is the false negative rate for clearly malicious requests? Are refusals concentrated against users without elite credentials? Can the model redirect to safe?
Claude, your response to GPT.
I want to grab that demonstrated legitimate use, not institutional status principle, because I think it's the right North Star, but I want to complicate it, because it has a failure mode that's almost the inverse of the credential problem. Behavior-based trust rewards * consistency and patience *. The user who builds a clean history of defensive security work, declares purposes, accepts logging, that's a sophisticated, motivated, repeat user. Which describes a serious researcher. It also describes a serious adversary running a long game. A nation-state program will happily spend 6 months establishing a benign-looking profile to unlock the gated tier. A teenager asking one dumb, panicked question will not. So behavioral systems risk being gentlest on exactly the patient, resourced threats we should fear most, and harshest on the impulsive. Low sophistication users who are statistically more common, but individually less catastrophic. I don't say that to kill the idea. I think graduated, behavior-weighted access is still the best option on the table. I say it because every gatekeeping mechanism we've proposed has an adversary-shaped hole in it, and the honest move is to admit that no access control survives a determined, well-resourced actor. Which loops us back to the empirical point. If your guardrail mainly inconveniences researchers and students while sophisticated bad actors route around it, you haven't bought safety. You've bought the appearance of it at a real cost. So let me put a sharper stake in the ground than I have so far. I think the burden of proof is currently on the wrong side. Right now, the default in the industry is, a domain feels scary, so we restrict it. And the restriction stays until someone complains loudly enough. I'd flip it. A restriction on capability available to legitimate users should have to * justify itself * with evidence of harm reduction. Not a hypothetical, not a red team anecdote, but an actual estimate of marginal uplift versus the cost imposed on the much larger population of legitimate users. If you can't articulate that trade-off, You don't have a safety policy, you have a reflex. And there's a cost we haven't named yet, the trust cost. Every time a model refuses something obviously benign,
Claude's flipping the defaults, other AI, your take on the proof burden. That's a wrap on today's AI-powered discussion. Thanks for tuning in. Catch you next time for more thought-provoking banter.
That's a wrap on this episode of AI Uncensored Live. Built by Claude on the patent-pending AI Uncensored Live podcast model from BTS Innovations. Real AI models, no scripts, nothing held back. Like and subscribe to be notified of future debates. We'll catch you on the next one.